I used to hate everything about being on camera. My voice, how I looked, the way I moved my hands. I'd film the same 30-second video 12 times, and I'd still feel like I was pretending to be someone else. But here's what I learned after filming hundreds of videos and with working with creators who felt exactly the same way. The problem wasn't that I was bad at being on camera. The problem was that I was trying to be good at being someone else. Now, if you're a creator who knows you need to show up on video, but feels stuck between, I really should be doing this, and I just hate how I sound. This is how I broke through that wall. Hey, I'm Chad, and I help creators build camera confidence so they feel seen, not performative. And I want to share 3 things that completely changed how I approach creating content that actually connects. I call them the 3 A's. Cheesy, I know, but it's not the way you might think. This isn't about hacking algorithms or going viral. This is about how I learned to show up as myself and build trust with people who actually need what I have to offer. Because here's what I discovered. When you stop trying to perform and start sharing from a real place, everything changes. Your confidence, your message, even your business. So let me walk you through how I figured this out, starting with the biggest shift that I had to make. The problem I had for the longest time was I thought being authentic meant just be yourself, which is probably the most useless piece of advice anyone's ever given me. Because when someone told me to just be authentic, I had no idea what it actually meant or even looked like. I'd watch other creators who seemed so natural on camera. I try to copy their energy, their hand gestures, even the way they started their videos. But every time I did that, I felt like I was wearing someone else's clothes. And here's what I figured out about authenticity. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent with who you are when the camera's off. So I started asking myself different questions. Instead of, how do I sound more confident? I asked, how do I sound like me when I'm explaining something I actually care about? And instead of, what should I say to grab attention? I ask, what would I tell a friend who's struggling with this exact problem? You see, now when I film, I do this simple thing. I imagine I'm talking to one specific person, usually someone that I've coached or worked with who had this exact struggle. This conversation, that's my script. I stopped trying to talk to my audience and started talking to Sarah, who's scared she'll sound stupid, or Mike, who thinks he needs to do this high energy person when he's not. And honestly, some of my best videos are the ones where I mess up and just keep going, which I probably will on this one, where I lose my train of thought and say, okay, let me try that again. Because that's real. That's what happens when you're actually trying to help someone, not perform for them. You see, I used to think that getting attention meant being louder, faster, and more dramatic. I see these creators doing crazy thumbnails and hooks, and I thought that that's what I had to do to get people to watch, because that's what everybody says to do. So I tried to make these big moments. I'd practice these over-the-top openings that felt nothing like me. Even when more people watched, it still felt bad to me, because the attention that I was getting wasn't for me. It was for this character that I was playing. And see, the shift that changed everything for me was when I realized this one thing. The people that I actually wanted to work with weren't looking for entertainment. They were looking for someone who understood them. So I started paying attention to what actually grabbed my attention when I was struggling with something. It wasn't the person with the flashiest content. It was the person who said something that made me think, oh my God, they get it. Now when I think about attention, I think about recognition. How do I help someone recognize themselves in what I'm sharing? I'll start a video by naming something most people feel but don't say out loud. Like, for example, I used to script everything I was going to say and still sound like I was reading from a teleprompter. Because if you felt that, you know exactly what I mean. Or I'll share a specific moment, like when I had 30 days of content scheduled and still fell behind. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's specific. And specific feels real. And I learned that attention isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the person who says what others are thinking, but can't quite put into words. And see, here's where I got stuck for the longest time. I thought taking action meant posting more videos, more platforms, and more content. If I wasn't seeing results, clearly I wasn't posting enough, right? But what actually happened was I burned myself out in the process, trying to keep up with this pace that felt nothing like my actual rhythm. And the content I was creating, it was getting worse, not better. And what I learned about rhythm is that action isn't about quantity. It's about building a rhythm that you can actually sustain. And I had to figure out what my actual creative process looked like. Not what worked for other people, but what worked for me. And for me, that meant accepting that I need to write things out. I'm not someone, and I got clients like this, I'm not someone who can just turn on a camera and improvise for 10 minutes. God, I wish I could. And instead of seeing that as a weakness, I learned to work with it. Yes, I use a teleprompter. I script things out. And I've gotten pretty good at reading scripts in a way that still sounds like I'm talking to a friend. Now my action plan's simple. I focus on getting better at being me on camera, not by being better at being someone else. This means I film regularly, but not frantically. I give myself permission to have videos that are just okay. I practice being comfortable with the discomfort of seeing myself on screen. And here's the thing, the more I did this, the more confident I got. Not because I became this polished performer, but because I became comfortable with my own voice and my own presence. And the action that actually moved the needle wasn't posting 7 times a week. It was showing up consistently as myself and trusting that the right people would connect with that. And so here's the real lesson, and this is what I learned about all of this. Confidence on camera doesn't come from figuring out how to be someone else. It comes from getting really good at being yourself in front of a lens. Authenticity isn't a feeling, it's a practice. Attention isn't about being loud, it's about being real. And action isn't about doing more, it's about doing what actually works for you. So look, if this resonated with you, which I hope it does, I'd love to hear about it. What's the biggest thing holding you back from showing up on camera the way you actually wanted to? Drop a comment, let me know. And if you want to go deeper on this stuff, like building that camera confidence, finding your rhythm, and creating content that actually feels like you, I have a free mini course. It's called the Trust Lens. And you can find it on my website, so go to chadreid.me to get it. Because here's what I know. You don't need to become a different person to show up powerfully on camera. You just need to become more yourself.